today's topic is really all about how BAs can take advantage of cloud certifications. And this is very cool because there's lots of different types of cloud out there, and lots of different ways that if you are a BA, or if you're someone just in business, that this might be interesting or relevant, or even just a little insightful for you. Because there's so much of an intersection these days between technology, which a large part of it is cloud, and the work that a BA does. So I would love to hear in the chat. I mean, I know that we've got a lot of software engineers here, some experienced technical people.
Hi, Amber. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But I think one of our audience said that they cannot see your slides, and neither do I. So please maybe try to share that again.
Yeah, I'll share it again.
Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe because, do you need to turn off your screen sharing too?
Yeah. How's now? Awesome. I think it's worked.
Is that better?
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So yeah, I would love to know what we know of the cloud so far, so that I know what we already know and what I need to cover. So what does the cloud mean to you? When we talk about certifications, I think everyone knows what a certificate is, and that you usually earn one, and then hopefully it shows that you've got some awesome skills. But what about the cloud? What is the cloud? What do we know? Where can I see the chat? Here we go. Awesome. Let's have a look. What does the cloud mean to you? Maybe it's just something in the sky. You know, maybe that's where we're starting. That's totally fine. Cool. Something where cool tech happens. Pretty much, Kev. Pretty much. Infrastructure at the click of a mouse. Wow, that sounds good. That's awesome. Using resources from the cloud. Yeah, absolutely. Hosting services, resources over remote services. Very cool. Very cool. That sounds pretty technical. A place to store and connect data. Absolutely. Yep. For sure. Services over the internet. Yes, that's pretty much the most basic one. Accessing powerful things without needing your own hardware. 100%. Yeah, great answer. So yeah, cloud is all of these things. I think that, you know, at its most simple, Anita, is it, had a really great answer. Services over the internet. The cloud is just the internet. And the reason that cloud certifications and cloud computing has had such a huge boom is because, you know, the same reason that Google Docs is so popular, instead of storing things on a USB or on your own hard drive. You know, why do we store it on Google Docs or Google Drive? Because, you know, you can store more, because you can access it anywhere. It's more secure. You know, you're not going to actually lose it or drop it in the ocean somewhere. And these are all the same reasons that cloud computing has become more popular. But instead of storing files, you've taken the whole of computing and the processing power that it takes to run a app or a website or a program or a database or a company or the government. You know, you've taken all of the technology behind that, and instead of running it on someone's, you know, computer or on a hard drive, you've actually just done it over the internet. And it was a huge game changer, because that hadn't been done before, and the previous way of doing things was very much build your own, like, literal hard little server where you would store all of your stuff, and it would have to live on premise with you. What a mission. Who knows how to do that? I don't. And I'm guessing that not many people here do, because it's a very niche sort of server skill. And that was part of the problem, you know, finding these people. So the cloud was a great alternative to that. Let's just do it all over the internet. Excuse me. So different types of the cloud. There's lots of different types of, like, cloud options or solutions. We're going to talk about some of the three biggest, which is AWS, Azure, Salesforce. And of course, there's Google Cloud as well, which is a bit of a new player on the block. But these are definitely the biggest in each of their fields. AWS, you know, Amazon, Azure is Microsoft, and Salesforce is Salesforce. It's its own thing. So we're going to go into what each of these are, and then a bit of the differences, and what you should learn, or how you should think about choosing if something like this is right for you. All right, so we're going to start with the big one. If anyone can guess which of these is the biggest, what do we think? Should we take a quick vote? The winner gets, I don't know what the winner gets. The winner gets to be right. How's that? AWS, Salesforce, Azure. Wow, there's actually quite a few options. Salesforce. We'll have one for each of them. The answer is, drumroll please, it's AWS. AWS is definitely the biggest. It's just huge. It was out first. They were like first out the gate. Amazon was this, tech giant that was doing really well. And they basically decided that they wanted to outsource the technology that they were using to run their own business. They were like, hey, I think we've got something cool here. Seems to be working well for us. We're making however many millions and billions. So maybe this is something that other companies can benefit from too. And, they were right. It turns out that the new way that they had of running all of their tech was useful for other people. So this is all, what AWS is about. And essentially, if you're trying to understand AWS, it's a bit like trying to explain what sports is as a whole. If someone said, explain to me what sports are, you would say, well, what kind of sport? Are you talking about tennis or hockey or swimming or gymnastics or running, or weightlifting? These are all different types of sports, but they all come under the umbrella of sports. It's the same with AWS. AWS is actually this umbrella term for a whole bunch of different services. So within AWS, they've probably got like 50 to 100, I think there might even be like 200 different tools within AWS that you can use. So when you talk about AWS, the hardest part is trying to wrap your head around everything that it can do. But I'll give you a couple of really clean examples that will just help you to understand some of the basics. Let's say that you are running something really heavy duty on your own laptop. Has anyone ever run something where, whether it's an application or a game, or you've downloaded something and it was really heavy duty and your laptop starts to go and it sounds like it's going to try and like take off or like explode? Has anyone experienced that? And I'd be curious to know what you were running. If you want to chuck it in the chat. Were you running a game? Were you running a programming? I remember when I did software engineering, and sometimes if I was trying to run a pretty heavy duty piece of software, my laptop would start to explode. Video editing software, if anyone's run that, any video games kill my laptop. Premiere Pro, so true, absolutely. Large data sets, editing apps, yeah, so true. Word, I don't know if that's super heavy duty. Yeah, trying to render a random video. Yeah, videos are the worst. So when this happens, you start to think, man, wouldn't it be nice if I just had a more powerful computer? Wouldn't that be good? And what you're probably thinking is, if I need a more powerful computer, I've got to go down to the store, like, search up the latest Apple, Mac, or whatever you're using, drain my bank account and then buy this new laptop and physically bring it home. Well, that's not the way, actually. There's another way that you can do it. You can actually buy that computing power over the internet. So you don't even need to buy an entire new computer. You can just access more computing power through AWS. So this was a huge deal, because if you were a business and you were running something really heavy duty, then previously you would have to get in more physical computers to make it run faster. But AWS said, actually, this is like kind of ridiculous. We can just access this over the internet. We've got some smart brains here. And instead of needing to go out and actually buy this physically, you can just like access it online. And that was like a huge, just like mind blowing. Let's see how this works. Another example is storage. Storage is very easy to understand because we use it every day. Instead of having to buy, another computer to store more files, you just store it in the cloud on the internet. And AWS took that to the whole nother level, where they said, forget about just your average photos, or maybe back up your computer. What if you can store every technological thing that you've created? Where would that go? All of the software, all of the code that you write. When you're looking at an application, Like, let's say you're looking at a company like Xero or Netflix. Like, where do they store their data? How much data do they have? So much. They store it all on AWS. So they became like the Google Drive for companies. They were just huge. And because they were first out the gate, they kind of dominated, and they're still like widely considered the leaders in the field. They are used very extensively from startups all the way through to very established businesses. So they're kind of the real deal. There's all sorts of other tools that they use, from storage. We talked about computing power. They also do AI and machine learning models. So they've got some awesome stuff there where you can use their existing tools that they have to actually start to create your own chatbots, create your own image recognition AI tools. They've just got a huge suite of stuff to choose from. So yay, AWS. Azure is next. Azure is like the competitor to AWS almost directly. Like, you can look, how I said they've got all these different tools. You can look at each tool in AWS and find exactly the same one in Azure, like toe for toe, T for T, like all the way down the list. They're just competing directly with each other. And to be honest, Microsoft was super slow at the gate. They just kind of dropped the ball on this whole thing. They started with a hiss and a roar, and then when it came to cloud computing, they just did not follow up. So they were, for the longest time, really far behind. But what they focused on, which gave them the unique edge, was government compliance. They really went hard on the government compliance. And if you've worked in government, then you might or might not know that government is required to store all data that it collects about the nation on nation soil. So, for example, in New Zealand, we have to store all of our data in New Zealand. And so what that means is that Microsoft, when they put a data center, which is where they store all their data, in New Zealand, they won all the government contracts. So, excuse me, Azure and Microsoft is hugely dominating in all government industries. Like, you're going to see, Power BI, Microsoft Dynamics 360, Teams everywhere. It's just a Microsoft shop when we talk about the New Zealand government. And they've done that very well for other places, of course, as well. Their big new claim to fame, which no one could believe, is that they were the computing power behind the team behind ChatGPT. So that whole company, Azure, kind of won their services, which pulled them out of this old school government game into like, wow, you're now the cool kid on the block. And it's interesting, if you were part of any of the chat groups, I'm part of quite a few chat groups around the place, and a bunch of them were from engineers and executives and people who work at, Microsoft and Google and all of these different companies over in Silicon Valley. And when Microsoft won this contract with OpenAI, no one could believe it. They were all like, what has happened? How did this happen? How did Microsoft win this? Because they were so down. The answer is they just spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of cash. So now they're on the upturn. Like, who knows what's going to happen next with them? Salesforce, number 3, candidate number 3, is a slightly different game. So whereas Azure and AWS go head to head in everything, Salesforce is actually a completely different tool. The reason it's on here is that it has a very strong certification market. It's a very powerful certification to get if you can get a Salesforce one, and they're very relevant to BAs. So I include this in here because it's relevant to the BA group here, but I've also included the other 2 because they're the 2 biggest players in their kind of fields. So Salesforce, on the contrary, is about how can you store all of your customer data for a business. So if you are any business, hopefully you have customers. Otherwise, it's a little concerning. I don't know what you're doing. And you want to store that information somewhere. Yes, exactly, a CRM. So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. And that was the core of Salesforce. But that was the core in like 2000 when they started. And since then, they have been on a shopping spree. I'm telling you, you can look back and see every 2 years, they're just acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. They have acquired company after company after company. And what's happened is they've built this empire, not just a CRM for customers, but now using Salesforce, you can build out your, all of your customer data and your database where you store all this data. And then you might think, oh, this is really interesting. We're actually learning some good things. But it'd be nice to like email all of our customers and like see how they're responding, maybe do some marketing campaigns. So then they brought a marketing company, and now they have Marketing Cloud, which is like an email marketing product. And then they were like, wow, it'd be good if we could track all of our customers' actions on our website so that we can see, oh, it looks like Lynn has brought, a cool t-shirt. I wonder how many times she visited the website before that happened. And so then they started saying you can build your website within Salesforce. So now you can track the customer journey from all the emails they've received, how they were interacting on the, on the website, and then, any of the purchases that they make after that. And then they started going even more crazy. And they said, well, we want to be able to track all of the analytics around it. We want to see how they're interacting with different social things. So they just became super crazy around actually how can we organize, track, and get customer data to be actually useful for a company. And then hopefully, the goal is that it's going to be a better experience for the customer at the end. So they were the first people to do this on the cloud. Yeah, big data. They're doing some cool things with AI now. As is the hot thing of the time. They've released a whole bunch of AI products. But their whole premise is, and why they were so successful, is because they were the first CRM company to do this on the internet. Before this, it would be like calling up Oracle or IBM, which was, the big giants in this field back in the day. Say, hey, we need a CRM to track all our customer data. Like, can you help us out? And they would be like, sure, please set up this server and install this and then download this software. And can you sign this like 5-year agreement? And everyone was like, okay, like, sure. And then when Salesforce came along, they said, we're only going to charge you like on max a year contract. It's all available over the cloud. You don't have to download anything. You don't have to set anything up. Just log in and you're ready to go. So that's why they're great. And that's why they were so successful. All right. I can stop talking for like a minute. Any questions so far? We're going to talk about why it's relevant to BAs next.
Everyone remember, you can always ask good questions during this whole session by using our slider.
Excellent point. All right, I shall continue. All is good. Fantastic. So why is this relevant to BAs? Well, BAs have a very, very interesting job. They sit at the intersection of technology, business requirements, and the process within a business. So there's a lot of things that a BA has to understand. It's not just the technology, it's not just the business requirements, but it's actually the combination of all of these. And a great BA is a great communicator, someone that can learn about a business and then communicate these requirements in a way that you're going to be able to translate to a tech team that people are going to understand, that's going to be useful in improving the business. So when you're talking about cloud and how popular cloud is, knowing a little bit about cloud is hugely beneficial as a BA, because it's going to be part of the user stories and the requirements and everything that you're designing. So if you actually have an understanding of how some of these systems work, even if it's just very superficial, just going to this talk would be useful, because now you know a little bit about what these tools do and why a business might have them. So being able to understand this is going to be really great for not only your communication with other people who are specializing in this, but also when you're thinking about how this is going to impact a company as a whole. So, some points that we have here is that cloud is now the backbone of many IT systems. And this is totally true, and it's not just one cloud either. We've been talking about them like they're very separate things, but it's entirely possible and more probable actually, that a company will use AWS and Azure and Salesforce, and maybe, excuse me, maybe even some Google Cloud as well. So there's a real, cross use of these platforms. And they will cover every aspect of the business, from sales and marketing all the way through to the actual product and the design itself. So being able to understand this is really important, especially when you're trying to align them with business strategy and goals. And a lot of the time, if you're really in the weeds and you're a very technical person, you're involved in the programming or whatever it is that's going on with AWS, then you're not always going to be thinking about the business strategies and goals as well. So you need someone who's got a little bit of knowledge of both and is going to be able to steer people in the right direction and advise some really good solutions. Absolutely, BAs are working closely more and more with cloud architects, developers, other stakeholders to ensure that cloud solutions meet business needs. And I'm starting to see more and more that people are asking for very specific skills when it comes to a BA. Definitely having that solid underpinning of being able to communicate, being able to understand different requirements, write user stories. All of that is really, really important. But, I was just looking just before this at some different job descriptions for BAs, and these were some of the first few that came up. And so I just screenshotted them because I think it was really interesting. This one's for a junior and intermediate business analyst with a general insurance background, preference for those with CRM experience, and definitely interested in those with MS Dynamics. So MS Dynamics is Microsoft. This is all part of the Microsoft suite. You can get certified in this. It's very, very like tangent sort of, not tangent, next door to Azure. CRM, Salesforce is the biggest CRM. There's a good chance that they might be using that. If you understand Salesforce, every other CRM is going to be a breeze because Salesforce is definitely the most complicated of them all. And this is a junior and intermediate one. This was another example over here. It might be a bit hard to see, but you can see here they're asking for some technical background with an understanding of integration concepts. Wow, that's pretty intense. All covered in cloud sort of skills. Using Azure DevOps, Jira, Confluence, or other equivalent project management and collaboration tools to manage user stories. Now, I wouldn't have expected to see this, if I was looking at tech jobs like 5 years ago. I wouldn't expect to see this unless it was a very technical job description. But, times have moved on such that now BAs who aren't actually building the solutions a lot of the time, but they're part of the design and the recommendation and the problem gathering. They're still being expected to use these tools to make the whole process more streamlined and seamless. So I just wanted to show here that there is a real drive to have a combination of the business skills and the technical skills. And this used to be referred to as like a unicorn type of person if you have both of these skills. But I think it's actually just becoming the norm. So definitely worth looking into. All right, so best cloud certs for BAs. There's a whole bunch out there to choose from. So I've really narrowed it down to 2 from each platform, which I think are really useful. Salesforce, you've got the Salesforce admin. This is like just your general starting point with Salesforce. You can go any which way you want with this certification. If you are interested in just doing BA stuff, you can go that way. If you want to be a Salesforce administrator, go into a consultant space, you can go that way. I mean, it's huge. You can specialize in whatever you want. But this is widely considered the first best step. It gives you a really solid foundation. The business analyst one here is also fantastic. Obviously very specific to a business analyst, and Salesforce very much focused on the writing of user stories, how you can better design a Salesforce CRM, and not so much on the technical, how do you actually do it? So I think it's very powerful to understand how Salesforce works because it's quite complicated. So if you're writing, detailed user stories about it and, trying to recommend, hey, this is how we could do it as a team, then I think that having some of the admin skills is good. But if you're just interested in a more of a high level one, then you can go for the business analyst. The business analyst is easier than the admin. So take your pick. Both are fantastic. Either is good. Admin is probably the better of the two. But it depends on how much time you have. AWS, the entry level one is the cloud practitioner. And I'm actually going to take a sideways step and talk about the cloud practitioner and the fundamentals one together. Because if you pass one of these, you can probably pass the other one. Remember how I said that they're like, competitors tool for tool, everything that they do? The concepts across both of these are actually very similar because they're both entry into cloud. There's about 40% of the topic, which if you know it for this one, you're going to know it for that one. And if you know it for that one, you're going to know it for this one. What you'll have to learn is the different names of the tools. So, in AWS, it's called like an EC2 instance, which is like a very bizarre sort of name. They're not very like human-friendly names, I have to say, with AWS. And Microsoft or Azure, we call that a virtual server. So you just have to learn the different terminology, but the underlying stuff is a lot easier. So if you're going for one of these, I would highly recommend that you consider doing the other one around the same time because you've already done the hard work. It's not too much extra. The next step on from each of these is quite different though. In AWS, the next logical one is a solutions architect. And I would only recommend this if you know that you're doing a large project with AWS in it. This is not really like a sort of side thing to do. It's definitely the next step up. It's not a general overview. It's quite hands-on, pretty technical, but certainly doable. But it's going to require quite a bit of effort. So I would recommend that you do this if you know that you're going to do quite a good project on it. Or if you just really love AWS. That could be you too. With the Azure one in here, the next step up, there's heaps to go through. I actually think a lot of the data analyst ones are quite relevant for BAs, but the AI engineer is kind of the hot one at the moment. It's really cool. It's got some good features. It's very employable. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. So I popped that one in there, but with Microsoft, there's no clear next step for a BA, but I would recommend some of the data ones, or perhaps if you know that you're using like Microsoft Dynamics in a business, then you can go for that one too. It's not an Azure one, but it's still under the Microsoft brand, which is very useful. All right, so there's a lot going on here. So how do you actually know which one is best for you? There's some really good questions that you should be asking. Which is basically like the right tool, the right background, and the right company. They're all useful, but ideally you want to match it up with a company that you want to work with or a project that you want to be on. If you're not too sure which one to do, then stick with just the entry level ones. Like for example, if you're already studying business analyst, do the business analyst Salesforce one. It's not going to be too hard. Do the foundational ones for AWS and Azure. They're going to take a bit of study, but you'll be able to pass them both fairly easily. That's if you're not too sure. Then just go across the board is the best thing to do. If you know, you're already at a company or you're interviewing and you're starting to see a pattern in companies you want to apply for, then instead of going across, you can start to go down. It's like that T metaphor. Do you learn a lot of different skills or do you specialize in one? So I recommend going across until you've got some indication of what either you like or you're going to get paid really well to do. And then you can dive down. And that's when I'd recommend that you just go hard on the different certifications that are interesting to you. But yeah, think about the right company. Is this a company that, if you're interested in government, if you live and work in Wellington, then there's a lot of government work. So Microsoft might be more relevant. The right background. Do you have a interest in servers, in a little bit of programming, those sorts of things? then I would push you more towards the AWS and the Azure. If you're like, absolutely not, keep me away from anything like that. Like server, I don't know, they work in like restaurants, right? And they just bring me my food. Then maybe you should go to Salesforce because that might be the better option for you. So think about what's going to be actually interesting to you. Salesforce is more business focused. AWS and Azure is definitely more like hard tech sort of focused. But they're all entry level, so you can do them all. And just the right tool, the right tool for the job. Take into consideration like what is most interesting to you, what's going to match the jobs that you're going into. Like just have a look around. Different clouds have different communities as well. Salesforce community is the strongest. AWS is the next strongest. Microsoft, not gonna lie, the Microsoft community kind of sucks. They don't have a very strong community focus, but hey, they're used everywhere. So time in and effort. Here's kind of the general pass rates, which I think are very representative of how hard things are. Salesforce, the general pass rate is 60%. With Nextwork, we usually pass about 80%. AWS is an 80% pass rate, and Nextwork we do 100%, and same with Azure. So AWS and Azure are typically easier to pass than Salesforce. People always underestimate Salesforce. They think it's going to be easy. All of the exams are multi-choice. So you think, hey, that sounds pretty good. It is not very good. It sucks. You'll never do a harder multi-choice exam in your life. Yeah, it's not. Don't take that as an easy option. All right, cloud certs can land you a job at these sorts of companies in New Zealand. I've kept this pretty New Zealand focused. So I've got Deloitte, Xero, PwC, Datacom, of course, like all the big consultancies will hire you with these sorts of skills. Xero, all the banks, BNZ, ANZ, Kiwibank, Westpac, they all use these. There's a whole bunch of other like different one-off companies like Generate. This one's an international women's development agency in Australia that one of our students went to work for. Fisher Funds, Frontiera is another one. You'll find a whole bunch of small companies are using these too. Yeah, heaps. I would be very surprised if you could find like a tech company or a company that uses tech that isn't using a cloud tool. So what are the different ways that you can learn? Obviously Nextwork, come and check us out. Otherwise, there's some awesome free tools. I'm not going to bag them at all. There's some really good ones out there. So Trailhead is the Salesforce one. I think I can type that in here actually. Trailhead.com. So good, Lynn. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a Trailhead one that's in there, which is fantastic. The last one, the Azure one here, there's a Learn Microsoft sort of career path here. I put it for the data analyst, but there's all sorts that you can do there. They've got their own badges system as well. If you just search in that Learn Microsoft one, really useful. AWS, I actually didn't put this one in here, but I just thought of it now. It's called the Skill Quest. So I'll just add it underneath. Skill Quest. Ooh, Skill Quest AWS. I think that's what it's called. I might have to search that one up. But that's pretty cool too. It's like this weird little game. They've built like this interactive game where you cruise around on a skateboard and you're in this world and you have to solve like all these problems that you find in the world. Cloud Quest. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cloud Quest. That's what it's called. Yeah, check that one out. That's pretty good as well. Those are all free. You can all start to learn them like straight off the bat. They're great for a test sort of run. And the cool thing is that, if you get these sort of certifications or badges, not even the certifications, the badges are still respected in industry. That you can say, hey, I've got this many badges. And people will be like, awesome. That's the real deal. Good effort. But yeah, we do a Summer of Cloud sort of program, which I'll talk about in a bit. And the reason that, we exist at all when there's so much, free learning content out there is because we specialize on a lot of the real world projects. And these platforms are fantastic for an entry level or a starting position. But what we find is that it's often quite hard to pass the certification by just doing these, particularly with Salesforce. You really want some real world experience. You want a project that you can talk about and show to employers and interviews. And that's what we specialize in bringing to people as well. We also just provide a whole lot of like structure and community and mentorship so that when you start, all right, by this date, I want to have finished. I want to have like been through this experience and not just done like just the free stuff. I want to kind of stand out a bit more. And a project is hands down the best way to do it. It's the toughest part, not gonna lie at all. Like doing a real world project is hard. But that's what it should be in order for you to learn. You want something that you can talk about in interviews. Hey, I tried to build this. It was a challenge. Here's how I got around it. That's the sort of story that's going to get you a job. So Summer of Cloud is a really fantastic summer program that we run. It's like a challenge from November to the end of February. So just that summer. We run it in partnership with Summer of Tech because Summer of Tech was noticing that there were a lot of students that were going for internships, and then unfortunately they couldn't take everyone on an internship. So what do these other people do over the summer? They can get upskilled. So because we partner with Summer of Tech, we offer some pretty sweet discounts in studying with us. So usually our courses are like over $1,000. But if you are a student and you are signed up for Summer of Tech, then you basically just cover the cost of your certification, which you would pay anyway to do the exam, and everything else. You get the whole program for free. So if you are interested, there's some more events coming out. So keep an eye out on our events sort of page. Or if you're a non-student or a student at all, you can email Kevin, Kevin@nextwork.org. He's the one that handles a lot of those applications. But there's some events coming out with Summer of Tech, I think on the 12th. And then I do a deep dive into each of the cloud platforms after that the following week. I think it's like the 16th, 17th, 18th. So keep an eye out for those. You can also check out our resources page. We have some resources there you can download. And I think that was actually very recently updated with a resource just for BAs as well. Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. So that's everything from me. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Yeah, just get into it, do it. Yeah. That's
awesome.
That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much for your time and all of us insightful opinion and this free resources for everyone. Okay, so next we're gonna jump to our Q&A session. Let's see what questions we get for you. Okay, let's restart sharing my screen. Right, is everyone okay to see my Slido page?
I'll stop sharing.
Yep. Is it okay to see my screen? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, so we still got our QR code on the page. You can ask a question at any time. Okay, so Amber, the first question is, many BAs are working as POS, not product manager, something like that, right? Do you reckon we should apply to both roles?
Is PO, that's product owner?
Yep.
Is that right?
Product owner, yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. Many BAs are working as product owners, right? Do you reckon we should apply to both roles? Is that both roles being BA and product owner, or both roles being cloud, different types of cloud? It'd be awesome maybe if there could be some clarification. Maybe we can come back to that.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So maybe you could clarify your question on the Slido page again. Yep, awesome. So the second question is, how long it takes to learn Salesforce, you reckon?
Great question. I think you can understand the basics of it, fairly quickly. Usually we say, if you're learning part-time, like say you're putting in 10 hours a week, we would say maybe a couple of months to get the basics down. To pass your admin certification, we recommend minimum 3 months, like best case 6 months, all part-time. Like that's kind of like 20 hours to 10 hours a week. It's a beast. Like these are quite complicated platforms. So it's not something that you do in a weekend for sure. And the exam is very detailed. So I would recommend setting aside 6 months part-time, like learning, after work or on the weekends to learn Salesforce.
Awesome. Thank you. It sounds very accessible. Okay, next one. Why would someone pick Azure or Salesforce over AWS? What do you think, Amber?
I think that if you want to pick Azure, it's probably because you're interested in some government work or government contract work. If you're picking Salesforce over AWS, it's because you're more interested in the business process side than the technical side. So, don't forget that Azure and AWS are they're like, siblings over here, like brother and sister. Salesforce is like a second cousin. They're kind of related, but not really. So Azure and AWS are very tightly like competing and coupled, like almost identical in what they do and the services they provide. Salesforce is a completely different beast. If you're learning Salesforce, you're much more interested in you're learning about sales process, about how you can optimize like different parts of the business from marketing to call centers to reporting to data. Like you're interested in the business process side. If you're learning about Azure and AWS, you're thinking how we helping the tech side of things. Like how can we make our website run faster? How can we set up better actual technology tools? Whereas Salesforce is very business focused. So yeah, if you're confused about that, just flip me a message and I'm happy to jump on a call one-on-one and go over it.
Awesome. Okay, next one. What kind of jobs we can get after learning cloud certifications?
Great question. With Salesforce, we see two main types of roles. You're either what we call an in-house admin. So you're working for a company like Xero, Frontiera, BNZ, ANZ. These are companies that all use Salesforce themselves. So they have brought it, they're using it internally. And if they need someone in their company to actually help manage and improve it and build new features around it, then they're going to hire you as an employee to help manage that. And I think Xero has a team of, I think at its height, it was like 90 people. I think now it might be around 60 people. I think that ANZ has one of the largest teams in New Zealand and maybe Australia. They usually have a very large team, or on the flip side, if it's a small business, you might be the only one in the entire business who knows Salesforce. That's also a very common scenario. So you've been employed by that company to help manage their tool. Now, on the other side, the second type of jobs that we usually see people going for with a Salesforce certification is a consultant job. This is where you're working for either a very large consultancy like PwC, Accenture, Deloitte, Datacom, OSF, or there's more boutique consultancies that are made up of like 5 to 20 people, maybe 5 to 50 people that specialize just in Salesforce. And their job is to help build more complicated Salesforce solutions for companies. So you're not going to be working on just the one company for your entire employment. You'll probably work on a company for anywhere from like a month or 3 months to a year or 2 years. And then you usually rotate through multiple clients. So those are the two types of role, in-house or consultant.
Wow, we had a lot of choice. Awesome.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then AWS and Azure is more cloud engineer, like cloud data analyst sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I see our audience has clarified the first question. So we jump back to this first question. So the question is, many BAs are working as product owners, right? So do you reckon we should apply to both roles regarding of the certification we're choosing?
Oh, okay. So do you go for a product owner or a business analyst, regardless of your certification? I think both are good. I think that if you're a product owner, it's probably more important that you actually have a good sense of the technology that's being used. So I would say if you're going for a product owner role, then probably just try and match your technology with what the company is going to need more. I think a business analyst is like a bit more general, like you can apply this in a lot more different places. But if you're a product owner, it's like, hey, this is your product. This is what you need to know. So yeah, I think it's a great idea if you're a product owner to get a certification. And at the bottom line, like you can apply for both the BA and product owner roles, regardless of whatever certification you choose. Like they're all going to be useful. But I would encourage you to, if you're going for a product owner role, to really try and match it with the product that you are owning.
Thank you. Right. So back to our question. So what size of a companies would like to use Salesforce?
Great question. Normally you're going to see large companies using Salesforce because Salesforce is famous for being very expensive. Every company that uses Salesforce is going to complain about how expensive it is. It is a very expensive tool. So typically, the only companies that can afford Salesforce are very large companies. So that's why you see them in a lot of banks. A lot of big tech companies. Most of the government runs using Salesforce. ACC, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, they all run off Salesforce. So it's some pretty big ones. Yeah, all of the Ministry of Health did a huge scoop of Salesforce talent when all the COVID and the vaccines were coming out, because everything vaccine and COVID related was stored in Salesforce. So
Wow.
yeah, they're
Awesome.
usually big companies.
Oh, okay. Next one. What is the lowest level of certificate of each one that could land your jobs?
Great question. Salesforce, I would, excuse me, not taking into account any other skills that you might have. If we're just going on certification alone, I would say Salesforce admin for Salesforce, and the AWS cloud practitioner for AWS, and the Azure foundational for Azure. So those were the 3 entry-level ones that I put on those slides. Of course, if you already have good experience or a degree of some sort in business analysis or as a business analyst, then you might not need the Salesforce admin. You can actually go for the Salesforce BA certification. And that combination is going to be very strong. But if I'm just looking at certifications alone, it's the admin, it's the cloud practitioner, and it's the foundational.
Great. Awesome. Okay, how long does it take non-tech people to learn the entry-level certification on average? But I think the audience said the question already got answered by you, so that's all good. Okay, we got 2 more questions. Could you explain more about the Next Work program? How can it help us to get certification?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that we run our Next Work program is each course runs on the same sequence and the same path. It's split into 4 different parts. Part 1 is always an introduction, where we just get you in the tool, building a whole bunch of stuff. The goal of part 1 is to give you the basic skills in order to do part 2. And part 2 is the real world project. This is where we actually partner with real companies to give you a project that you can work on with them. And you design your own solution, you build out the solution, you need to film a demo, you need to write a whole bunch of documentation, and you're building assets that you can talk about in interviews. So that's where the best learning happens. And you usually work on that in a small group. So peers is usually best, but a lot of students do end up doing it individually as well. Part 3 is the exam. So once you've done part 1, intro, part 2, project, part 3 is let's just focus on passing the exam. And that requires practice tests, that requires a lot of revision, that requires getting very, very detailed. Then part 4 is about landing the job. So now that you've got your certification, you've got your project, let's actually get you into a job. And that's where we go over things like how to build a CV, You know, how can you interview? What's the best way that you can start to post on LinkedIn? All of these sorts of things. So we found that this 4-part process works really, really well. Not just for passing the certification, but for actually the full journey. Because if you just do the certification, there are a lot of other people that will just get the certification too. You want that project and that demo and documentation.
Great, awesome. Okay, we got like one more question coming, so still 2 questions left. So sorry everyone, due to the time problem. So maybe if you had more further question, welcome to link Amber on her LinkedIn. Just connect her and ask a question. Oh, okay. So how about we choosing 2 of the question you would like to answer the most? Amber, how does that sound?
We can just start at the top and go down. I think that's pretty fair.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So next question is, what would be the quickest certification to get?
Probably there's a if you know BA already, do the business analyst one. If you don't, there's a Salesforce associate one, which is pretty easy to pass, but the easier it is to pass, like the less it means. After that, it's the AWS, the Azure, and the Salesforce admin out of all the beginning ones.
Awesome. Yep. And the next one is, are there different pathway to get Salesforce certificate, or it is more like one is a pre-request for another?
Oh, great question. It is like a huge like map to try and work out which certifications you want to get. Some of them have requirements, some of them don't. The best most certification you can get in Salesforce is called the technical architect. When I started, there were only 3 technical architects in the whole of New Zealand. So they're hard to get. And to get those, there's a lot of prerequisites. But for majority of Salesforce certifications, there's actually not that many prerequisites. But you still need to know your stuff. Like you wouldn't want to jump way ahead and do one of the more advanced ones unless you had the admin. So some of them do, some of them don't. Depends on what you're interested in. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I guess we don't mind to ask the last question. So yeah, is ECBA issued by IIBA better than other?
You're gonna have to define. I'm not too sure. Sorry, what the ECBA means. You have to excuse my lack of acronym knowledge here.
Yeah, I think that's foundational BA certification issued by IIBA. That's a one.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the job that you're after. I think that if you're just going for the BA, it sounds like that one is more like just BA focused, whereas the other ones are combining them with these cloud tools.
Exactly.
So, yeah, probably best to get the basics down first, and then layer on top these other ones if you're really set on the BA path.
Awesome, great. Okay, so that's all of our question answered. So hope our session help you understand more about how BAs can take advantage from the cloud certification. And thank you, Amber, for your time spent today and answer all of those questions.
No
and
problem.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, awesome. And we had I'd just like to introduce a little bit about our next coming event. So please, everyone, stay tuned of our YouTube channel and subscribe our YouTube channel. Our today's recording will upload to the YouTube channel soon, and our next event is coming on the early November. The topic is Data BA from Data Engineers Observation by Aaron Zhang. It's gonna be a great session. So thank you, everyone. That's gonna be our session today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you,
later.
everyone. Bye.